Welcome to the Truth Podcast. I'm your host, Hany Rambod. I'm here with my co-host, Austin, and we have a very special guest today. We've been discussing for many, many months getting on a podcast together, the one and only Milos "The Mind" Sarcev. How are you, Milos?
Great, Hany. Thank you for inviting me, and nice to meet you, Austin.
Very nice to meet you.
You can say that we were going to have this a week ago, but that ice storm was in Texas, so we had to wait until today. Listen, I'm so excited because you are one of the few people that I would really like to talk many aspects of bodybuilding, prep, dieting, training, so I think we are at the same frequency there, but I would like to get deeply into conversation.
Well, I'm looking forward to it too. As Milos mentioned, we had this podcast scheduled a couple weeks ago for last week, and then we had hit with the Dallas ice storm. So the studio was closed, the offices were closed, everybody was working from home.
They were calling it Dalaska.
Dalaska, yeah, because it's like Dallas becomes Alaska. Dalaska was here last week, and then today it's like 70 degrees outside.
Yep, warmed right up.
But
obviously the main topic of today's podcast is going to be how you two can help me get to 260 pounds. So just keep that in mind.
Shredded
260. So we'll just keep that in mind as we go into today.
Where we at? Where we at, Austin?
Right now I'm like 210.
Yeah.
210. Got a ways to go.
That's like
we'll talk about the Milos's protocol on how to get you to 50 pounds in 6 weeks.
Deal.
Listen, I just posted 2 seconds before I went online.
Yeah.
Force MD Marcelo from Brazil, right?
Yep.
In the first 6 days, 6 kilos. So that's 13 pounds, right?
Yeah.
That's my progress. So, Austin, if you're interested, we'll talk.
There you go.
Deal. Sounds good.
I know a guy.
I know a guy. Exactly.
That's it.
Exactly.
So speaking of Milos, what year did you turn pro?
I turned pro. Listen, a lot of Americans would be pissed off at me, right? And say, oh my God, you didn't win the nationals. You didn't win the USAs. How did you get your pro card? So, Dorian Yates didn't win the USA Nationals, and Ronnie Coleman did not win neither Nationals or the USA, right?
Right.
Back in the day, there was every country that they have their winner could send application to the IBB, and if IBB office thinks you're good enough, they might tell you, okay, send the application. So there was 1990 Nationals that I've seen. Wayne Amelia, and I told him I'm from Yugoslavia back in the day, and at that time I couldn't really travel. I couldn't go to the World Championships, but is this any way that I can get pro differently? So then he said, do you have any pictures? And it's funny because you're going to say like, oh man, you brought the pictures with you? And I did. I don't even know why I did there was not
but that's not strange. There was no strange back then, because back then there was no phones. There was no smartphones, so you couldn't turn around and just open up your smartphone and say, "Hey, look, here's my photo. This is what I look like." So you brought the hard copy photos.
Yeah, hard copy photos, and I gave it to Wayne Amelia, and he's looking at it and said, "Wait a minute," and then he goes to Jim Mannion, and then he came back. Gave me pictures back, say, tell your federation to contact us. Like, holy shit. And as a matter of fact, I even remember there was 89 pictures from Las Vegas. Look, I was competing as an amateur like 38 times before I turned pro and did 72 pro shows. But as an amateur, I was doing any show that was available. So it was Orange County Muscle Classic, I remember. Then I did Cal State Championship that Flex Wheeler won overall. And then a week later, I wanted to compete on the West Coast. There's nothing. Oh, there is a Coastal USA Championship in Atlanta. So I went there. I won that one. And then I came to Vegas for a vacation. And it was a Friday. I was in the gym, and there's a poster like, Las Vegas Classic. I said, I'm here. All I need to do is take a diuretic. and I won that one, and I won actually the overall. At that time, imagine 1989, there was a national qualifier, and the promoter would pay for your flight and hotel to the nationals. So this is great, I'm going to nationals at 89. There was a rally in North Carolina, right? So I go there. I was already pumped up backstage, and I actually think that I went to that first round on the stage, right? And I came off the stage and they say, hey, what's your name?
I know where this is going. I know where this is going.
Yeah, what's your name?
Oh God. You're supposed to be a citizen.
Citizen,
right? Yep.
Of course.
Whoa.
So, I had to speak English, right? They say, are you a citizen? No. So what the hell are you doing here? So
I'm about to get ready to go on for the comparison
I was
round.
on the stage for like a few seconds, right? And that was funny. But anyway, so I turned pro 1991. And as I said, 1990, they told me send the application from Yugoslavia, which I did. And then, unfortunately, my father had a stroke. And then I had to go to Serbia. And I was really there with him all the time. But 17 days before the San Jose Pro Show, I actually returned back. I didn't plan to compete. But you see, you have a pro card. It's a small little expense, San Diego, San Jose. I say, why don't I just go and test it, right? I really literally wanted to be on the stage with some of the pros. Maybe my friend is going to take a picture.
Yeah.
And send back to Yugoslavia. It's a big thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's 1991, right? To be on a stage with some, and then John Brown was competing, and John Brown was like one of my idols. He was in Yugoslavia, like 83. I mean, I'll never forget his performance. I mean, there was 10,000 people, grandmas, grandpas were jumping off the seat, with a standing ovation, right? These kind of things. And then it was Albert Beckless.
Yep.
It was
some legends.
Tim Balknap, Steve Brisboe, Franco Centuriello. There was like all these people. So as I'm on the stage, I remember I was number 2, standing right next to Tim Balknap and Albert Beckless. So, of course, I don't think in a million years they're going to call me out on the first call out, right? I'm just there and I'm telling my friend to take a pictures. I'm in a lineup and posing. And then, there was a kind of weird moment of silence. And then again, and then. So Vendemilia was calling my name, but he couldn't pronounce. I mean, God knows what he was saying, right? You know what I mean? Because nobody ever called me by my real name. And I said, like, oh, shit. And I was in first call out with Sonny Schmidt and Ron Love. I actually, and this is because you're going to talk about this judging system, how it was, with the Bob Chicarello, this debate that I have.
Yep.
I actually won Symmetry Round in my first show. That particular one, I won. I end up placing 3rd and qualifying for Olympia in my pro debut, which you can only imagine, when you go somewhere, have zero expectations, you go there to have fun, and actually become one of the boys on the stage. Next morning, I actually have to schedule muscular development, Ironman, and Flex Magazine photo shoots. I said, what? They all wanted to put me on the cover.
So you were on Spotlight at that point.
Yeah, this is like. And
where did you place at that show?
3rd. I qualified for Olympia. Yeah, Ron Love was a winner. 2nd was Sonny Schmidt. Albert Beckless placed 5th in that one. Wow. And then, if you remember, it's good to mention. A week later in Niagara Falls, at the age of 61. Albert Beckless won Niagara Falls Pro Show.
Wow. Whoa.
At the age of 61. Wow. This is, my heart always jumps. Because
he had the freakiest arms. The arms were
freakiest arms, crazy conditioning. But I mean, when you look at him, right, you could never say the age.
Right. No, he didn't look his age at all.
Yeah.
But Milos, let me ask you this. You did 72 pro shows, and you won 1 out of the 72. And back then, which is, I mean, again, this was an era that was very, very difficult. So I'm applauding you for all you 72 shows in general. But at the time, we used to have a qualification system where there wasn't very many pro shows. And the pro shows that were there, you would be able to qualify for the Olympia when it was top 3 for all the pro shows. The Night of Champions, I believe, was top 5. Mr. Olympia was top 10 to requalify. Is that correct? I think it was either top 6 or top 10 for the Olympia. I'm trying to remember, but I remember. Yes, and then so which show did you win and what year was it?
I won Canada '97 Pro Cup,
Okay.
And then I lost to Chris a week later at another champions. He was first, I was second. Yeah, but the qualification system, you're completely right. Top 3 in any pro show, top 5 at the NOC and Arnold Classic also.
Yeah, Arnold Classic as well.
Arnold Classic was very prestigious. And then, but here's the problem, because even back in the day, like Vince Taylor would enter all the shows and win all the shows. So here goes one placing is right there. Sonny Schmidt, and so usually you would already have like 3 guys there that probably are going to requalify. Nobody else is going to qualify.
Right.
And there was a time in the early 90s that because of that,
you drop down.
They allowed to the 4th guy to qualify.
Right. If all 3 were already qualified back in the day.
Yeah.
So again, guys, we're talking about this 20 plus years ago.
Interesting.
Was that if the top 3 were already qualified, just so that they can get more people qualified. Because again, at the time, there weren't that many shows, Austin. It wasn't like it is now.
Yeah.
And now, obviously, you have to win. But what would happen is that if all 3 were already qualified, then the 4th place person would automatically qualify. So that was also in the time. But going back in the 90s, well, you and I were talking, and we're like, God, when did we first originally meet? And we originally first met, and I saw you for the first time in I believe it was 1994.
Yeah.
I had just graduated high school a couple of years before
year.
that.
Great year.
What was that? Is that you?
No.
Oh,
it's a few years before I was born.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
I was going to say, I don't think you're that old. You're younger than that. But 1994, you were getting ready for the Olympia, and you had come up to Campbell, California, and I was training at World Gym. It used to be the Ironworks before that, but when I was training there, it was World Gym in Campbell. Mm-hmm. And what had happened was I had graduated a couple of years before that, and I was already competing because I was competing as a teenager. And then you'd come in, and you were getting ready to do a photo shoot in the gym with California Bodywear. And California Bodywear, for those of you back in the day, they used to be really these loud colors and these stripes. And you'd have these biker shorts that were like barber pole. And, Jay used to wear them.
I know which ones you're talking about.
Flex Wheeler used to wear them. You'd see everybody. Aaron Baker was a big one that was to be in there. That was another guy that's a super legend, that one of the most underrated pros, Aaron Baker. And I remember you coming in there, and you were wearing some shorts, and then you took your shirt off and you were on a leg extension, and they were shooting you. And I look over there and I'm like, wow, that guy's ripped. This guy, and again, Milos was never huge, but, and then so somebody came over to me and they're like, who is that? And I said, that's Milos. I think he's getting ready for the Olympia. And no, actually I asked somebody else. I said, what show is he getting ready for? And then I think the owner at the gym, Mark Rifkin, I think told me at the time, he goes, he's getting ready for the Olympia. And then I didn't say anything. And then Mark looked at me and he says, well, what do you think? And I said, I don't think he's going to beat Dorian.
Oh.
And I was the biggest Dorian Yates fan, because I was like, okay, coming up is Dorian. By that time, he had already won Helsinki in 92. He had already been 93. He
Milos was like, we're cutting the podcast here. It's been great being on. Thank you guys.
No, this is no disrespect, but how much did you weigh in 94, Milos?
I was like 232.
Okay. So and on stage though, you probably had to be a little bit lighter than that on stage by then.
I had all those journals and I was writing. Listen, I was actually heavier than I looked. I'm going to tell you this.
Oh, really?
Because you see, look at the bones. So I know that.
How tall are you, Milos? How tall are you? Or how tall were you? Because you're always
I was 5'10" and a half.
Okay.
79 centimeters in a Yugoslavian army, guarantee. I mean, I promise. And
it's the Truth Podcast. You got to tell the truth.
I'm now under 5'9".
So you've lost an inch and a half.
I promise you. But you see, my grandma from my father's side, she was quite tall by the age of 70. I mean, she was like, so I think I have those genes. I promise you, if you compare my pictures with Ronnie and Dorian and who else was Lex, about same height, about 5'10", I was there.
That
I was taller than Jay. And now Jay is either stuffing his shoes, which
he does. Jay wears lifts, man. I'm telling you, him and Tom Cruise have Atomics shoes. I think you're right.
He's got the stuffing some tissues in the Atomic shoes underneath.
Because how this happened? I know I shrink a little bit, but not that much. But anyway, for 94, right? And I just posted also today because I found some old footage. I have VHS tapes. 94 Olympia, I was peeled beyond belief. I really, that I don't know exactly when you saw me. I kind of remember photo shoot. I kind of remember exactly leg extension and all that stuff. You never said hello. I mean, you should have, but now I know because you're a fan of Dorian. You didn't want to.
I was a fan of Dorian. So I turned to him and I say, God, this guy's going to have problems against Dorian. Well, and you got to remember, Dorian just got off of 93 win. The 93 win, it was a big jump, so he was a monster. Those black and white photos of Dorian had come out. Kevin Horton took them, and that was up in Birmingham Gym. At Temple Gym, he took those photos. So those just started coming out right before the next Olympia, because there was such a lag period back then. We used to call Gold's Venice and ask for the placings, and they were saying, we don't have the placings yet. Don't call back, because I kept calling. It's like, what's the placings? Because the internet didn't really exist.
Yeah.
So you couldn't look on the internet to see the placings. So I would call Gold's Venice to find out. Then the pictures came out, and then next thing you know, Milos is doing the same show. And to put things in perspective, again, he's 5'10 and a half, 232 on stage versus
left side of Dorian.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
5'10,
the left side of him.
5'10", 270, 260.
Yeah.
Around those numbers. I think he was around, his lightest was 92 Olympia. And then in 93, he made the big jump. But that was.
But 1 second, let me just jump in because you're a fan of Dorian. And then you just said before, we waited for like 3 months, for a Flex magazine to come out, the magazines, right?
Yeah.
And you would call a Gold Gym to find out. So you tell me, how could those pictures, black and white pictures, taken 6 weeks out of the Olympia, be already in the magazine before the Olympia?
Because it was the 94 Olympia. So those 93 was the photos that I saw. I don't know when those came out originally.
No. That was, those pictures were published before 93 Olympia.
Oh, they were? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Hell yes. Because I know that he won the show weeks before, like he killed confidence of everyone. I mean, going into the 93, up until the moment those pictures were seen. And I mean, whoever sees those pictures, and there was no Photoshop back in 93, right? Or at least we didn't even know about it, but it was no Photoshop because you see him deliver this on the stage. It was freaky.
It was. Yeah. It was very freaky. And
but that conspiracy theory, you would need, if you want to put your supplement line in a Flex magazine, the earliest you could get is 3 months from that day.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
And those pictures made it on the pages before the show, and he won the show.
Yeah, I didn't realize that they actually came out before the show. I remember seeing them because they still circulate.
Trust me. But you're a big Dorian fan. Were you a fan all the way through?
I think that I was a fan, right? Yeah, to a degree, because I liked his mental fortitude, right? Like I also believed I followed Arthur Jones and Arthur Jones' training style, which eventually he created Nautilus and high intensity training, and then Mike Menzer and a lot of those things. And that's a lot of the things that I believed in because I tried many different methods of training as I was a teenager and I was coming up and I was competing as a natural bodybuilder. And so when I saw that Dorian Yates was using that, I said, wow, okay, great. Somebody who's actually being a little bit more cerebral, somebody who's actually thinking about their training. And so when I was in high school and I was reading and I was seeing that he was actually starting to follow some of the people that I was following in regards to the books and a lot of the different types of training methodologies. Back then it was books. It wasn't the internet. It wasn't, you'd get the magazines and you'd get the books. Magazines would sensationalize different things that were quote unquote weeder principles. And then we would turn around and read, if you really wanted to be focused on understanding different techniques and muscle fibers and type 1, type 2, and trying to figure out volumization methods versus strength and torque. And I can sit down and really break these things out. Those are the things that I would nerd out about. And then I would really nerd out about arginine, ornithine, and amino acid profiles and how to increase your natural growth hormone as a natural bodybuilder. And that's what got me into a lot of the bodybuilding supplements, especially the natural ones. Pharmaceutical stuff like that, you start to learn as you start to progress and you're trying to work up the ranks, and that's a whole different, subject matter. But one of the things that I really enjoyed is being able to understand different methodologies, because most people didn't have them. They just took a bunch of gear, they trained hard, and they didn't always train smart. And then what they would do is some people who had really good genetics would really trigger growth, and then the ones that didn't would just either hit a plateau, or they would just end up not, kind of fizzling out. And that's where I was just really always trying to learn and understand. And that was back when we didn't have internet, we didn't have social media, we didn't have these things. So I was always trying to find the people with the worst genetics that made the most amount of improvements and ask them about how what kinds of techniques helped get your calves big, and how did you end up breaking those plateaus? So to try to derive the best information from people that I can turn around and be able to use for myself when I was competing.
So, you study Arthur Jones, Mike Manzer, then you've seen Dorian Yates. Did you try to apply this heavy duty on yourself?
Yes, absolutely.
You did? Okay.
Yes, I did. And I felt personally it was okay, but I liked the volumization method more. And so what I did was when I created FSC7 training, it was a combination of HIIT with high volume. So it's not quite, I know you do a lot of giant sets, and you have almost like a German volume training type of principles, right?
No, I actually, you'll be surprised. It's very similar to, I do both heavy and light. Sarcoplasmic myofibral hypertrophy. I do always both, 1 and 2. But I'm going to tell you this because that's interesting now. At that time, you idolize maybe Dorian, and then you read about his technique. I actually had an opportunity to meet him, right? And it's okay. I remember this. I was training legs 95 after the Olympia in Gold's Venice, and he came in with Leroy, his training partner, who, by the way, I was going to use the same line that I used for Leroy for Austin. Austin, shut up! You talk too much.
Really quick on this one, I'm just taking all this in. I'm taking notes on this one and absorbing a lot of
this is going to be how you
happening
50
right here.
pounds of muscle.
Yeah, we'll get there.
This crossed my mind because Hany and I are talking, and you're being polite and listening. But this is the case. He came with Leroy. I was training legs. I remember I was on a squat rack. I love squats. I was strong at it. So he said, Milos, too bad you're doing legs. I was going to train legs with you. Dorian's going to train legs with me? I said, when are you training? Tomorrow. I'm coming tomorrow. I'm training legs. Of course. How can you miss on that opportunity, right?
Sure.
So I trained with him there. I trained with him in Birmingham, in his gym a couple of times, and in my Colosseum gym a few times. And I promise you, I didn't believe that this is all he does. It's kind of, how can you just, warm up one set and then go all out? For me, there's no way. He was true to himself. I mean, really, he was so meticulous in execution. Oh my God. And then he was using quite a heavy weight for type of execution that he was doing. I mean, you have to give him a credit. And he was under that same belief, if you can nail with one hit, why keep hitting and all that stuff, right? Yep. For me, and I've seen many heavy duty guys, everybody that I know of had multiple tears, multiple injuries. And it's just not a matter of if it's going to happen, it's just when it's going to happen.
That was the number one thing, by the way. I was going to make a note of that I felt that was the big downside, is that how can you try to minimize the muscle trauma to the point of injury? Because that's what I saw a lot of other people who were using similar training methods, whether it was just straight HIIT, whether, whatever variation of that Dorian style training, a lot of muscle tears, quad tear. I mean, if you look at Dorian, he had a quad tear, he had a bicep tear, he had a tricep tear. I think he tore his hamstring. There's a bunch of different things. It's like a laundry list. But it's one of those things where, something may work, but if you have that many issues with muscle tears, then the net positive is not going to be very good in regards to the investment that you're going to make.
I'm sure that you advise this to your athletes nowadays. The only thing that it can stop you is injury. So please, make sure at any cost to avoid it. I mean, the whole concept of all out. If you're really all out, what does it mean? All, everything, including muscle, tendon, ligament, how can you differentiate? Say, okay, muscle, you do the work. Okay, tendon, don't be involved.
Right.
I mean, so it's anytime. But most importantly, you think that 94 Dorian deserved to win?
I wasn't at the show in 94. I hadn't started going to the Olympias until the late 90s. So everything that I saw in the pictures, I thought it could have went either way. So it was very difficult for me. A lot of the guys after 94, 95, when did he tear his bicep? 95?
Before 94, yeah.
Okay.
So he was already with the torn biceps 94 on the stage.
Okay, so 94, when that happened, everybody questioned, well, how does he score in the symmetry, or what goes on, or is it the overall package? And I think that when I saw the photos, I saw some photos that still said that it was like you had to knock the champ out, so therefore he still wins, or do you turn around and do it? Obviously, you have an opinion on that. What's your opinion on it?
Well, listen, I mean, was Big Ramy knocked out and he slipped all the way to the fifth? I mean, so there is always...
God, we have so much good stuff to talk about.
As soon as I heard that, I was like,
talk a little bit about Big Ramy. We got the Arnold. We got to talk about all of these great subjects.
So, okay. Can I use this moment to talk about the judging a little bit? So I introduce Austin. Actually, can I turn this around and do it as a questionnaire? Because obviously, Austin, you're a fan of bodybuilding, right? For years. How would you define what is a bodybuilding contest? I mean, if you would tell your mom that has no clue, what is a bodybuilding contest all about?
I would say that there's differing schools of thoughts when it comes to that. And I have a little bit of a different perspective growing up looking at a lot of old school classic bodybuilding, because my uncle was a bodybuilder back in the 60s and 70s. And so I would always look at classic physiques from back in the day. That's what I always admired and looked at. And so I would say that my description would be a little bit different. There are some people who either go the route of symmetry, conditioning, and size, and the combination of all of those and the flows of the physique. But then I would say that there are those who look at it like a freak show. And I feel like there's kind of a differing perspective when it comes to that, and that leads very much into where you would see those people placing. So
what would we want to have? You think about all of us. If you want to make this sport better, okay, and your mother is asking, okay, so a bodybuilding is a physique show, so the best physique wins. Yeah. How do you find the best physique, and how do you determine that?
I would lean into symmetry, small waists, flow of a physique while combining. So the second that the size starts to compromise those things is when I would back it off and start to reward the smaller waists and the better flow in physiques.
You define a bodybuilding, not a muscle building. Mm-hmm. It became, from bodybuilding, beauty of a sport. And I'm going to tell you, because you probably don't know, in the early 90s when I competed, there was 3 distinctive different rounds that have specifics. The first was about what you said: shape, balance, proportion, symmetry, aesthetics. Okay. You cannot pose. Stand, relax, front, side, back. This is how you're being judged. And that's how I won that first round in the first pro show that I tell you. I look like a man's physique, doesn't matter, but still won that.
Well, no, men's classic physique. I mean, you look like a men's classic physique guy. Yeah. Because if you look at your proportions, and I know where you're going with this, but I think that you have to also take a look and say, well, look, there's other divisions that have been put into the IFBB as well as the NPC, so that it will actually grant somebody the ability to be able to do well with proportionality. So if you have a weight class now in the pro show, i.e. men's classic physique, what's going to do, they're going to really judge the shoulder to waist, because it keeps a cap on your weight. So it's trying to really define a look. With open bodybuilding, it's really about the overall mass, but it's also, I think obviously this year there's been a little bit of a change with Hadi and Derek taking 1-2. But when you turn around and you look at it, they're really rewarding in men's classic physique, similar to what you were a part of 20 years, 30 years ago. And I think that's where the evolution has kind of branched out. Because I know that the conversations that you have online right now with Bob Ciccarello, and those for you that don't know what's going on, there's a difference between posing rounds and being scored and posing rounds not being scored. And in the past, the symmetry round had a specific score. You had a comparison muscularity round, and then there was also a posing round, correct, Milos?
Yeah. But if I can just complete, I was trying to convince Austin, right? Because if I convince Austin, then we can convince all the other people in the world listeners, right? So I asked him, how does he define bodybuilding contest? So bodybuilding contest back in the 90s were exactly this: 3 rounds. First was asymmetry, okay? Then second was muscularity, when they choose 8 different poses. Actually, there was 7 back in the day, but most muscular was added. 8 poses from front, side, and back. Did they find that this is minimal amount of poses that we can see everything we want to see? Mm-hmm. Peaking biceps and hanging triceps, V-taper, X-frame, sweeping thighs, everything here, front, back, side. That's muscularity round, and that's judged that way. And then third round, they say posing. It's posing. It's not posing round. And this is what pisses me off, because they keep confusing choreography, dance, the way you move. My bones can move if I have no muscle. What is posing routine for? I show 0 muscle. No. This was individual posing round where you can show the strengths of your physique other than mandatories. And that's why and that's why I would ask you, Austin and Hany, think of Arnold Schwarzenegger, top 5 best poses. Not mandatories. Mm-hmm. Twisting back, mantis pose, Frank Zane, whoop, this one, vacuum, his most muscular kind of, think Sergio Oliva, victory. I mean, we fall in love in bodybuilding looking at those pictures, and that was a contest. So to define right now, as it is, we have a Mr. 8 mandatory poses. This is who wins. It's not who has the best body, symmetrically, aesthetically, with a mass and mandatories, and then show me what else you got. So the thing that I have an argument with Bob, obviously, he says, no, everything is considered. No, it's not, because athletes were encouraged to practice only mandatories. All this other shit doesn't matter. You want to tell Arnold, hey, Arnold, you just wasted all these beautiful poses of yours that you did. That doesn't count. Don't do them. Frank, all this posing, it's for nothing. Lila Brada, why are you doing these poses? We just want to see these 8 poses. Well, Lila Brada would catch the eye on, that's like 30 beautiful poses that I haven't seen in the mandatories. Okay? Now, I have maybe more reason to give you Lila Brada, placing over somebody that maybe beat you in mandatories, okay? But it's not Mr. 8 mandatory poses, it's Mr. Olympia, best physique in the world. So even now, to open that kind of worm, because I know you have athletes that they're at the top, number 1 and number 2. And you think, okay, open bodybuilding is for mass. You want to shape, go to classic. No. Classic, again, look for criteria in classic, what you want to look. This is still bodybuilding. Are you going to, like Austin said, go with the shape and bodybuilding, or just freak me out muscle building? Mm-hmm. So there it is. What we looked at, and that's why you were a fan of Dorian. Dorian had a combination of, balance is there. V-taper was there. X-frame was there. All the mandatories was phenomenal, right? Mm-hmm. It was not my cup of tea. I would for sure go with Kevin Levrone and Flex Wheeler and Sean Ray. For me, that's bodybuilding. But of course, that was overwhelming mass, so much size, so much width, so much condition, and he wins pose by pose. And then I can see how judges can award him.
Sure.
But they didn't have a courage to say, well, we don't want that direction. We want this direction. So even now, I mean, which direction you're going to go? For me, Hadi is most complete. I mean, it's most beautiful. Zero weaknesses. Everything is there. The best combination of size, width, balance, completeness, conditioning, front to side to back. I mean, when I talked to Jay, he kind of mentioned, I don't know if you hear it, before the Olympia, like he had a kind of boxiness to his physique, right?
Mm-hmm.
Again, and that was funny coming from Jay, right? Okay.
Shots fired.
Shots fired. I was going to say shots fired.
Unbelievable.
As he was saying, I just brought the mirror in front and back, but I have zero. I seen Hadi winning 2019 and 2020, 21, easily. Now, when you bring Derek into equation, and now Austin, if you can imagine, now you have to judge. If I have to judge Hadi and Derek in a symmetry round, okay, that's a front, side, and back. Derek has as complete as Hadi is. Derek has that God-given shape and V-taper that's never before seen. Okay? And beauty to it, right? Ooh. So now
it's so animated. Yeah.
But you see, if you and I have to judge, because it's easy. What Bob says right now, it's all considered, all blended in. No, that's the easy way out. Put the finger on it. Okay? It's an easy way out.
But I think, but just I'm going to hear you out, but then I'm going to go ahead and give you my
I want to hear your whole opinion.
Yeah, my opinion on it. But go ahead and finish up.
Okay, so what do we have in recent years, like 15 years or so? Guys are encouraged to just do mandatory poses in the free posing routine because it does not count. It counts worth of shit. You can do all these fancy poses and moves and doesn't matter. It doesn't count. It's not going to change the score or anything. Why? Now, when you have a Arnold Schwarzenegger, Villa Brada, and this type of physique, they're going to invent 30 different poses to glorify their physique. They look phenomenal. Oh, my God.
Right.
And they're going to put in a routine that's going to entertain the crowd. And the crowd is going to go to the bodybuilding shows at night, and they're going to say, like, hold on a second, this is not over. After the prejudging, halftime, this guy is winning, but here he has to perform. He has to bring something that can overtake the other guy. So it brings value any which way you look at it. Guys are going to be forced to raise the bar. Right now, nobody practices. Like you, I have many clients, and then I say, okay, what is your posing routine? You have a music here? I don't have one. I say, what? I don't have one. I'm going to improvise.
Right.
Holy shit. So, but this is where we came to. This is allowed. Aren't we supposed to improve in every aspect of our life in anything, in bodybuilding? Should we make a better posing routines, better competition, more exciting? Audience is going to go wild. They're going to, just do the mandatory, stick your tongue out, walk left and right, and that's all you need to do.
Right.
And those guys work it off. And I promise you, me as the biggest fan of bodybuilding, I can't even watch those routines. I watch, few selected that would put some effort, but to see them do the same mandatory poses they did in that first minute, and then in the second in comparisons, the same thing. And now, like, I didn't see you already doing this. I've seen you. Right. And that's going to be in confirmation round. Is going to be one more time. You're going to, okay, show me something. Bodybuilding. I'll tell you this very quickly, and then I'll let you speak. Sorry that I'm taking so much time. Johnny Jackson was on an old school podcast like Tuesday, and then he was also complaining, Milos, you have 1 minute, and then let the guys rest behind the stage and say, I said, you want to tell me that you built this physique for years and years and dieted and lift all this weight, and then you just want 1 minute to show your physique and then let me rest backstage? I don't want to work too hard. I mean, Kevin Levrone, Lila Brada, Vince Taylor's, you would have to get them off the stage because they would stay there all day.
Yeah, I remember that.
And that's the way. So do me as a spectator want to see somebody that enjoys themselves and they want to show us, or they just want to, okay, I have to be there. Just look at me briefly and I'm going to walk off.
Yeah.
So do you think that contest would improve by bringing some changes? And which changes do you think are reasonable?
So I think there's a couple of different things going on. Number one, you have a symmetry round, which when they do quarter turns, you're looking at everybody's shape. And obviously we're going to use the example you used with Derek Lunsford. He has very good V-taper. He has a very great X-frame. So he really pulls ahead in that. When you're doing the mandatory poses, you have Hadi, who is very dominant with muscle maturity, density, conditioning, front to back, on the sides, everything. So then all of a sudden, Hadi pulls forward on that, and he has a more complete look because he has more mature muscle as of right now. Now, ultimately, we've all seen many people who try to focus too much on their shape, carrying their shape forward, expecting that to be able to win and coming in 80% conditioning. So there's a conditioning component as well. So it's muscularity, conditioning. So that's already kind of going on right now without those poses. Now, I know that at some point in the last 20 years, there has been a shift with that posing round not being judged because of what Bob Ciccarello is saying. I know what you're saying, but I also think that what Bob is also saying is saying that they're mixing that together. And then when people were saying, what about the art form of showing your poses? Shouldn't that be part of it? And I think because it's become more analytical with the mandatories, what they did was they gave the posing award, the $10,000 check, and a lot of those things were given in its own category because some people that didn't have the best physique, but they had a very good routine, would end up winning that.
Yeah, but can I just say,
sure.
Sorry, I apologize because I get too excited. It was not.
It's very excited to be on the podcast.
But here is the facts that are important to consider.
Yeah.
It was not that posing round was taken out. Both symmetry and posing round was taken out at the same time. Okay. Which we don't need it. And like I said, that artistic posing, it was never about the posing. Mm-hmm. You want to show appreciation and give $10,000 posing award for the performance, entertainment, mm-hmm. artistic value, beautiful. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't belong to the judging of physique.
But isn't Bob saying that that's being built into it because what's happening is they're combining it? So you're saying you prefer it to be split up in regards to the actual judging is what you're saying.
What is more precise? You tell me. If I have a commodity, I'll just blend all three together. I don't have a responsibility of putting my name as a judge. It is in aesthetics, symmetry, balance, proportion. I'm putting my numbers down. Here it is. This is how it was for years. This is how I was actually gaining momentum in the competitions in the symmetry round. Then I would be killed in muscularity, right? And things like that. And I have no problem. And I'm not saying this is bad. Just what is if you have 3 filters to filter your business right now, mm-hmm. 3 specific companies that are analyzing everything. Their expertise. Okay. Or let's just blend it out. It's good. We're doing good. Okay. 3 filters. If we have taking symmetry away, they reduce aesthetic component of physiques. And you could see it.
Right.
This is by definition, for sure, they reduce aesthetics. Then muscularity, these are those 8 poses. So let's be honest. Let's call this is Mr. Olympia 8 mandatory poses, because you're not going to judge the twisting back shot. You're not going to archery shot. You're not going to do all these other poses that,
Right.
Now, how did Arnold win those titles? Think about it.
Well, I think it was a different time back then too. When you had the time where the judging has evolved. So you're talking about classic bodybuilding. That's what I consider classic bodybuilding, where a lot of those different poses really mattered because Sergio there's like a handful of people that can pull off a Sergio pose. It was never a part of the mandatories. It was something that was added if you felt you look good. I mean, you remember the moon pose? The moon pose?
Moon pose is not allowed. It's illegal.
Right. For those of you that don't know, this is the moon pose. Do you know about the moon pose?
I'm trying to think. I could probably picture.
Yeah, you're bending over, basically. Yeah, you're bending over.
Got it.
And that was a thing because people wanted to show off their hamstrings.
Yeah.
So you turned around and you just bent over, and it was
gets the job done.
But it was been banned.
Yeah.
So when you look at these different type of artistic poses, every person has their strength and weakness, and the posing round it's being used in the posing round.
I don't know if it is, though, if you don't mind me kind of interjecting. And that's where actually I really, really like what you said there. And I think that this is something that I've always had a viewpoint on specifically. And I know that you guys both obviously have more experience than I have years on me, even total. But back when I was competing, I would spend a minimum of 1 hour per day posing. During prep, 1 hour per day posing. And what I would do is, and nobody else around me in any of the gyms that were usually full of competitors would do this, is I would just put on music and then just go and just come up with stuff. And you would end up in random poses where you'd be like, that actually looks kind of cool. And then kind of manipulate that a little bit and work on it a little bit more. You would develop something that isn't a mandatory pose, or it's not something that's very, very common, but fits for your physique specifically. And I think that that's what I'm seeing is a lot of the guys that will practice posing nowadays will go in and they will do their set of mandatories to music. And that's what's become kind of almost the most disappointing part to me is you have a lot of these guys that probably due to their shape could come up with something entirely new and really, really, really special. And I do think that there should be some way of incorporating that. But so many posing routines nowadays are just a set of mandatories to music. And it doesn't have that special, like each person's like a WWE character where they have their cool special thing per person. I just don't really feel like that exists right now.
Well, this isn't the WWE, number one.
Well, yeah,
but number two, also, you're trying to get through a bodybuilding show with hundreds of people that are competing in it. Even at the Olympia, there was 400 people competing. So I think that they're trying to be able to combine some different things. But would be interesting to see what the rebuttal is. I mean, you see, I've just been able to pick up a little bit of what Bob was saying and what you were saying. But for me personally, if some of those things, when you see, for example, the guys in classic physique, you look at Dino, you look at Chris, you see those guys, and those guys, they're throwing a lot of that in there because their physiques are reminiscent of the classic. And I think that what you're basically trying to surmise and say is the fact that you would like to see that in the open, is more people embracing that and actually creating a round that would be judged in showing the different aesthetics of the physique.
This is bodybuilding is how it all started, and then they evolved. Right. Why did they bring the classic physique? Because they started losing the beauty and those classic poses and classic physiques.
Sure.
And okay, so you can't get that big, so I give you height and weight ratio, and you have to fit in this. Right. It's all beautiful, okay? It's still not even a classic bodybuilding. That's classic physique. Because I mentioned that example.
But why? What do you see as the difference between classic physique and classic bodybuilding?
2019, if you remember, you watched, and Chris beat Breon and George Peterson. Okay, in any sense of bodybuilding contest, if that was classic bodybuilding, they smoked him. Okay, they only had a front double biceps, back double biceps, right? And Chris didn't have neither back or bicep. And those guys had a crazy back and biceps and complete physique, right? So, and as I was making these comments, then Chris Aceto said, like, wait, you know, this is different rules. This is classic physique, and they look for a structure. They look for different things.
Right.
Okay. You know, excuse me, my ignorance. I didn't know. But I love classic physique. Look, those guys pose their asses off. It's beauty. I mean, those are the routines you want to see. Right? That's why we all, but as I'm hearing you, Hany, you're kind of agreeing that, hey, leave open bodybuilding to freak me out show, not to impress me, you know, make it beautiful. Let me say, wow, look at that physique. Look at these physiques. Okay, so I understand. But it's muscle building, bodybuilding. So you kind of agree that it's enough if you just do the 8 mandatory poses.
I'm okay with it because I do see that they are checking the symmetry round. Now, you have a different perspective because you came up with those divisions being judged on paper back in the day, and now they've combined some of those. So I understand where your point of view is, But in my point of view, it is happening, because if it didn't happen, it wouldn't, the guys that are the smaller 212 guys that they would call them, Hadi and Derek, wouldn't, William Bonac, those guys that were all used to started off at 212 now are up in the top 5. I mean, William has been as high as second place at the Mr. Olympia as well. And I do not want to take away from the fact that we do need to talk about the Arnold Classic, because you have a guy in the show that we want to talk about, and also everybody else. But the thing is, I believe that there's ways of doing things and trying to culminate with bodybuilding and classic. I know what a lot of you guys that want like classic bodybuilding, and I love classic bodybuilding too. And I've become more appreciative of it now that I've worked with Chris. I mean, now, because again, I'll be honest with you, in 2019, I wasn't there watching Chris. So I can't even comment on the Breon versus Chris, because I wasn't really studying it, because I didn't have anybody in the division. So I wasn't sitting down and studying it. I was worried about Hadi getting a visa and Hadi coming in and competing in 2019. And honestly, I do agree with you. I think that he could have won that show, and it would have been a great thing. And a lot of people thought that he could have been higher than third, that he placed in his first Olympia debut. But I think that ultimately what it comes down to is that look that you're showing on stage, that is a classic physique look, classic bodybuilding, classic physique, call it. What a lot of fans want to see is more of those artistic poses. I saw Chris doing a lot of those poses this year when in his routine. I saw a lot of the different athletes using those artistic poses. But from what you're saying is you'd like for that to be more formally judged.
Look, here it is. Are you judging best physique or just 8 mandatories? Because that's the bottom line.
I think so. What's going to happen is if they start judging that, it's going to be much more subjective, right?
No, because much more objective now.
No, I think it's more objective when you have 8 mandatories, because it's more black and white. When you start to judge somebody's, okay, so let's say one athlete does a twisting back double bicep and it looks amazing. Okay. Then the guy next to him is doing a Sergio shot. Which one is going to carry more weight?
Okay. So this is how it is.
Okay.
They already have a clear picture of what they look like in a symmetry and muscularity already.
Right.
So they already have vision. This is it. And they have their placings. Okay. But now I have that chance to show you maybe a little bit extra, and you see like, whoa, the multiplication of these beautiful poses right here, that shows that this physique is, way better. Maybe, okay, now he showed me all that. This guy didn't. Maybe I want to put him ahead.
Okay.
And the next time that guy that lost because, I was just focusing on these 8 mandatories, this is equivalent to go to the boxing match and say, okay, you can use the uppercut. Just use, this, or no 3-point shoots or no slam dunk in the basketball. Hey, bodybuilders pose. You're supposed to pose. Football players play football. Fighters fight. You pose. But you're limited to these 8 poses? What the hell? The whole bodybuilding was based on Larry Scott, Sergio Oliva, Franco, Serge Nubret, all these guys, Arnold, on the beautiful poses other than mandatories. Those 8 were just picked to be sufficient. I say minimal to gauge everything. Okay, be gauged, because otherwise it would be 100 poses.
Right.
So let's
use
8 most mandatories and look, give them more value. I mean, I don't know. I'm just throwing you give them a higher percentage, like fitness has more for routine and less for I mean, I don't know.
So let me ask you this. Are you saying because you want Samson Dauda to win certain poses, you're going to change that?
No, you see, I promise you this. I'm a big fan of Derek. Okay, I'm a big fan of Hadi.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Andrew Jack.
Yeah.
So
I know you are, because you've been very, very.
Yeah, I mean, listen, and it's like, and they say I'm Nick hater. I'm not. I love the guy. I like physiques that I like, and I don't like, and I speak about it. So when you say open is open, classic is classic, how are you gonna classify Andrew Jack or Derek or Brandon Curry or Samson? Okay, is this anything classic to them? Yeah, a lot of classic with a size.
Right.
So open bodybuilding that has that classic component. Do we want a Superman or we want a Hulk? Do we want a beauty or we want a beast? I don't know what we want, but define it as...
I think it's all very subjective. I don't think it's an objective sport. That's why a guy that's 5'5", 5'6" can beat somebody who's 6'2", and vice versa. And I think that somebody who's very wide can get beat by somebody who's more narrow, because somebody who's more narrow, who's got more 3D muscle, can turn around and beat somebody that's wider. There's a lot of different components, but I think that in open bodybuilding, some of it has to do with wow factor. I really do. And I've been on both sides of that. You know, I had my athletes lose to Big Ramy, and Big Ramy is just a monster guy. And I've seen him, and I think his peak was several years ago, and he may be able to gain it back. So I'm not saying anything about him right now, because I can't wait to see him on stage at the Arnold this year. But he's a freak. But when you have a guy that is like a Derek or a Hadi versus them, it's very different. But what you're trying to do is you're trying to look at a picture when they pose. Where is your eye drawn? Where is your eye keep going back to? That's what open bodybuilding really is. And it's not just, hey, this guy does this quarter turn, 3/4 back bundle bicep, and this other one is doing a Sergio pose, or this other one is doing an Archer pose. And so that, again, I think brings in more of that subjective nature to me, where when I look and they're all doing a front double bicep, or they're all doing a most muscular, where's my eye going? Where's my eye going? So that's where it is, because just because you're bigger doesn't mean you're better. And I think that we saw that at the Olympia this year, and I think that that's being rewarded. But I understand what you're saying, but I do think it's a bit of your nostalgia that's speaking for you, because that was you too. I think that when you come over, you would have been a classic bodybuilder, not, classic physique competitor, not an open bodybuilder at 230, 225, 230. That's your weight class. I think that's about it. Cause I know, Chris is 240 at 6'1", and he's at 240. So you would have been like probably like 215, 220, kind of like Dino, if you had to suck down. But again, it would depend. Maybe with what you know now, maybe you would have been bigger back then. But we'll talk about that too, because I do want to talk about a lot of other things. But going back to this,
with this one.
What's that?
I don't want to drain you with the.
We don't want. So, my thing is, I do appreciate your viewpoint, but I do think that it's one of those things where, if you look at it, going into the Olympia or the Arnold right now, the Arnold is several weeks away. You have a Samson doing the show, and I know there's been a lot of talk between Samson and Nick Walker, and talking about Beauty and the Beast. Right. I mean, that's kind of how, right? Isn't that how you define it?
It is. And listen, with all the respect, Nick is one of the most popular guys out there, right?
Yes, he is.
And, rightfully so. It's a very likable guy and hardcore bodybuilder, true passionate, lifts his crazy condition and all that stuff. But still, right? Is this bodybuilding or muscle building? If it's just muscle building, okay, I understand. We're already going that direction. You were not there right after Olympia when I was asked at the muscle development interview about placing, and just asked that one question specifically. Sure. How did Nick Walker's physique beat Samson's physique? Mm-hmm. Okay. And Jose Raymond just jumped right on conditioning. Mm-hmm. And that was a little bit better conditioning that, you have to account that for. I understand. And that's what you're saying. Considering even the shape, even muscularity, everything, if you are shapely but not conditioned, you should be penalized. And there are levels, and I'm sure. So I agree with that. Now,
so where would you have had Nick Walker then?
I would have him. I would have him fourth after Samson, because Brandon was still a little off. And then I would put Brandon, and then Big Ramy, and then Andrew Jack. Okay. Rana Labrada, if you ask me, even, everything considered, I would still think, because it's multiplication of shape, aesthetics, everything, right?
So if you're using that, I'm going to counter that. So then why does Samson beat Andrew if conditioning isn't going to be as much of a focus? give me how you would see Andrew versus Samson at the Olympia if you were judging. Yes. Yeah. I'm going by the Olympia now because I'm trying to get your perspective.
More balance as far as thickness. Okay. Lower body, upper body balance, thickness, legs, hamstring, hanging, all that stuff. Just overall thickness. Andrew is wider structure, and he has a crazy ability to look even more ripped than he is because he had this separation, crazy abs, beautiful. Standing relaxed. I said that Jake Hollis, standing relaxed. Yeah, I can see Andrew beating him. A lot front lat spread. Yeah, I can see there too. Okay, even front double biceps. But then they turn to the side. Samson dominates him with the thickness, roundness. Just brutal. Round chest, round shoulders, hanging hamstring. From the back. Still Samson beats Andrew, for me.
So you have him beating him in the back double bicep and in the rear lat spread?
Yeah, both. Yeah.
Okay.
Both. It's not a slam dunk. It's not Derek Lansford slam dunk back double biceps and Hadi, but it was compared to two. Yes, I would still give it to Samson, which it might be a different story at the Armor Classic. If both of them tighten up and who has the ability to show more.
Absolutely.
You see, just when you look at the skin and everything and separation tie-ins, you can think that maybe Andrew can, if he's really ripped and dry, he can pop more into your face.
Yeah.
That could happen. But still, can you really build the thickness, from the side? And then when you get this kind of condition, kind of same thing what you did with Hadi, you sacrifice conditioning a little bit just to give him 10 extra pounds. So now if you're going to go with Andrew to go a little bit down, is his hamstring going to still hold on from the side that is already kind of weak? That it's a half of the body. So listen, going into the show, I said Andrew and Samson are my biggest favorite. This is who I want to be competing for top two for me.
Because you like the shape guys.
Yeah, I like the shape guys. That's plenty of size.
But you got to remember,
shape.
That's why I think, but also what Nick brings is he does give a freak factor, right? So that's when he's up on stage, he does have a freak factor. So you can't discount that too.
It's tough though when you look at, because then, okay, and I'm just going to preface this. You have to preface everything on the internet these days. The tough part about bodybuilding is when you are saying that you don't like something, you're saying you do not like the person. And that's the tough part. It's not like, this person performed a certain way in their sport, whatever other sport it might be. It's not like if somebody's a basketball player and you're like, they didn't perform great that day. You can see on paper that they didn't. When you're saying that you're not a big fan of something, it's like, you're saying, I don't like how you look physically. And it's like people take it obviously as a direct attack when we have to be able to commentate on it. But like as a shape fan of the sport, personally, when I see Nick Walker go out on stage, I'm just kind of like, I don't see it as a great look for the sport. Now, I do think that he's the favorite going in to win. And I know that obviously everybody again, but I think it's whether or not you're.
But you're also a classic guy, too.
Yeah, exactly. So and view it that way. And so this leads me to one question I would personally, as a fan, like to ask both of you, being people who have very extensive experience in the sport. I would ask you guys this: do you think, in both of your opinions, we will ever reach an agreement on what the standard should be?
No. Because I think it's a subjective thing. Bodybuilding is very subjective. Some people like blondes. Some people like redheads. Some people like brunettes. You like all three, so it doesn't matter. But it's one of those things that it really comes down to personal preference. But I do believe that the ultimate physique is one that carries
everything,
as many of those properties as people would always say. Phil Heath with the width of Jay Cutler would be crazy. It would be next level, right? Well, it wasn't, but could that ever occur? Maybe, with a little genetic modifications, some lab work.
Let's not go there. That gets dicey.
Let's get some vials in there. But what I'm saying is that everyone's trying to chase this ultimate physique. But when you look at it, what judges look at, I think, are what's eye popping. what's going in. And I think that sometimes when people who don't have the best shape win, it's because that attention is drawn, right, Milos? Is that attention is drawn, and you're like, wow, his conditioning is so crazy that moves them up. Now, does it move them always up to a win? No. But does it move them up? Yes, above and beyond. I mean, Branch was a perfect example of that. Branch would go out. He won the Arnold Classic. He's placed top 2 at the Olympia before. He's turned around and done a ton with that shape that is not really great. He just made it up with crazy muscle conditioning, and he just looked. And I think that's a perfect example of that is Branch.
Okay, so here is perfect. Now is the moment to bring that in. Okay. Because you and I talked earlier how some people were viewing that you guys, you and Derek, chose to pass this contest because Nick is competing, and you would have a maybe not fear or concern, but
no, the word that was used was scared. That was the word. So who used it? Because Jay ended up.
Now we get into it.
Yeah, let's talk about this, Milos. So when you guys had the podcast, when you guys had the podcast on Jay's, who was the one that said, or it could have been more than one person, that he was scared?
So this is how it started. I watched at Olympia TV, and there was Bob, Sean, Nick, and Tarek. Talking about it, and then somebody already started talking about Derek being scared of competing against Nick. Okay, and then whatever Sean said, I really thought that he did say that Derek was scared, and Sean sent me the message, and he's all upset.
You're talking about Sean Ray?
Yeah, Sean Ray sent me a message like how he never said that. So I took that. So I apologize if he didn't say it, right?
Okay.
But the whole thing that he was saying, oh my God, he's losing $300,000 prize money or possibility. How can you possibly pass on? I say, hello, Sean. You passed all these Arnold Classics. You missed $1 million. And I wrote him that message. If you had balls, you would compete. And,
you said that to Sean?
I texted him. I can send you the screenshot. Because he was insisting no, he wasn't scared. I mean, I don't want to compete for a $10,000 show. Okay. Arnold Classic was never a $10,000 show. Right. Arnold Classic was for many years second, biggest prize money. So how can you possibly?
It was always the second biggest prize money.
So Sean competed one time only in the last 10 years in 96 Arnold Classic and was killed there, placed 5th, get spanking and realize that, oh shit, I can't just walk in here. No, seriously. Right. I mean, you're talking about at the time, Flex Wheeler competing, Kevin Levroni, Nasser Somebody, Chris Cormier, Paul Dillette, Vince Taylor. You had, your
crazy lineup. You had your hands full.
Yeah. And for Sean, I claim this. Whatever he wants to say, he was afraid to be challenged, and he saved himself for Olympia and all this stuff. Now, fast forward to this year. Jay Cutler at that particular podcast, right after I said that. Claims that he's scared, and I say 100% for sure he would not be scared. I mean, that was my statement, and I know this for a fact.
So you're saying Jay said it? You're saying Jay said it?
So Jay and management, I know they're gonna listen to this. They're gonna say, no, we didn't say that. But listen word by word. There was you sense it. It was going into that direction.
Yeah.
Why would you not? Jay won. No, he was second to Ronnie 2001 Olympia and won 2002, right? So he says, I'm highest placing. It doesn't make sense. I'm not going to win, right? Of course. So on that note, if you listen to me, I said that I wish that Derek is competing. I mean, he established himself already. For sure. You guys had the courage to jump from 212 into the open division. So there goes any discussion about the courage. You show the ultimate courage with Hadi, going from 212, and with Derek. My hat, so there is no discussion. So I don't know the reasons you probably want to elaborate why Derek didn't compete.
Sure.
You would just make complete logical sense for his career, for money, for prestige, for momentum, for, it would make sense because some judges actually saw him beating Hadi. That's how close it was.
I think that some of the arguments I've seen out there when it comes to this topic have just been so absurd, in my opinion, where I'm just like, people saying he's scared. I'm like, he just beat the dude. And in my opinion, lights out beat the dude. And yes, Derek's a friend of mine, but I can objectively look on stage and see like to me, there was not a competition there.
Well, I think, look, let's just talk about this again. I've talked about it several times. Number one, the people that are not realizing, everyone that's speaking about this have never done what Derek has done in that short period of time, besides Hadi, who won, which is go from 212 to open all within the same year. So not going in to defend his title because he was able to get the invite and move on. That happened. So he hasn't even seasoned what he's been able to build from going into open. If you look at the criticism of his physique over Hadi's or anyone's in that top 5, they're all going to say muscle maturity. So to create muscle maturity, you have to season the muscle. Shoulders, chest, arms, all of those body parts to be able to get harder and drier because it's new muscle. So for you to be able to season, what does seasonality mean? It means when you season something, whether it's a steak or whether it's to take it through an entire season, fall, winter, spring, those are seasons. To season it, you're giving it time. You're giving it time to be able to actually be its best, to be able to get more graininess and to be able to really get that muscle belly to pop, but also be dry enough on stage to look impressive. He does it in the back. He does it in the glutes. He does it in the hamstrings. He does it in those body parts. He has yet to do it with this new muscle on his front. So the longer he has that new muscle that he just gained this last year, the better it's going to look on stage the following year, the following show. So that's one of the different types of things. So if you want me to sit down and really break down how Hany Rambod, Hany does this, or Hany, I'll just tell you for certain. It's called The Truth Podcast. I'll be completely honest with you. When I sat down with Derek, I gave all the pros and all the cons of doing the show. And then I pushed it in front of him and I said, you decide, because at the end of the day, it's your decision, not mine. So when I gave him all of those things, he made that decision. He sat down with his wife. They kind of went over it. They said, hey, he came back to me. He says, I think the best decision is for me to try to work on my improvements right now, work on making sure I get healthy, and then move on. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the health situation too. When you're doing these shows, on paper, everyone says he should do this or he should do that. So Milos, what I'm saying is when you have an athlete and you're pushing an athlete, they have to make that decision if they want to do the extra 9 weeks of all the gear that they have to take, the dieting, the protein, the training, all of those things on top of the things I keep talking about that will work behind the scenes that make you successful, which is your team, your wife, your family, all of those things to create that family dynamic for you to win. You have to make sure all of those things are aligned too. I mean, Absolutely. Derek had just gotten married last year. He hasn't even had his honeymoon. So none of those things are discussed. But if you don't have those things, I guarantee you right now, you will not have a winning formula moving forward unless you have a stable home life when it comes to all of those things and create balance. And it's not just one thing. So I know the internet's gonna be like, oh, what was it? Did it have something to do with his home life? No, it's everything combined to be able to create that proper chemistry to get the best result. And I really try to focus on that. I do. That's what makes me different, I believe, than a lot of the coaches out there, because I try to create an environment to be able to improve when it comes to every aspect of their life. So when I sit down and I see Sean Ray or whatnot talk about Chad Nichols, or he turns around and he talks negatively about coaches or whatnot, you got to remember now the reason why he doesn't talk about me, knock on wood, is because my guys are healthy. Right? But if tomorrow my guy doesn't become healthy because I push them into doing shows that they're not comfortable doing, or because they've just made quick decisions, then they're going to be talking about me. So let's keep this real. The Truth Podcast. Let's keep it real. So at the end, it's about that. Point. Right?
You make a very strong point right there. I mean, you nailed it exactly the way you said it. And I'm sure because Austin was even kind of offended that it was lights out. There's no competition. Fact is, everybody knows Derek was not afraid. I mean, for the love of God, how can you even mention this, right? And that you were very confident that if he goes again mano a mano with Nick, he has the tools to beat him. Of course, I do not know about would I easily close the eyes for $300,000 because that's a ridiculous amount of money, right? So just having that opportunity, but I commend you for making that choice is yours. You choose, and Derek is not in a hurry. I mean, he's focusing all in that Olympia prep. Which, by the way, is going to be very hard to dethrone Hadi.
Yeah, and that's another reason why he wants to try to improve, because he knows that's going to be hard. But he doesn't even look at just Hadi. We never do. We never just look at one person. I coach Hadi, I coach Derek, but I coach them to both of them to be at their best. But I'll tell you this right now: how come if Hadi had a visa, you don't think he'd be doing the show?
I said this. I'm devastated for him not to do the. I don't care.
So is he scared? Is he scared? Is he sitting in Iran scared of anybody that's doing the Arnold right now? Or is it because of the political situation and how hard it is, as you know, with Behruz, all of the situation, how difficult it is to get these Iranian athletes to America? So I'm just more
impossible.
What's that?
What he did is impossible. I mean,
no, it's not impossible, but it's very, very difficult. But you're right. It is very, very difficult, Milos. But I want to take this opportunity because I know that a lot of people like to talk and say things and make controversies and whatnot. And sometimes I've sat back and I watched everyone in the peanut gallery that wants to turn around and talk about things. And I just say, at the end of the day, let the athlete make the decision. It's not about, I tell people this all the time. They go, well, why wouldn't you get him to do it because of 300,000? I said, at the end of the day, it's his decision. Would it help IRIVING actually? I'm a sponsor. It would help IRIVING, right? Exactly. It would, because it's going to give him eyeballs. But ultimately, he has to make all the decisions because he's the one who's going to live with the repercussions, whether it's this short term with the Olympia prep coming up, or whether it's long-term with health, or whether it has to do with short-term with money or long-term with money. Those are all things because he cashes that check, but he has to also write that check when it comes to his physique and his health. So those are why the athlete chooses, period.
Yeah. Okay. I had one question, but sure. I didn't want to interrupt you before, and I forgot now. It just came back to me. So I was always on a hot seat biased coach, and I'm talking about Samson. So now I'm going to put you to be a biased coach with Derek against Nick, right?
Sure.
So the same scenario. We talk about bodybuilding, classic, the differential, what you were making. Oh, classic, go there. This is open. Freak me out. When you stand out and stuff like that. So how did you see Austin? Said lights out, Derek beat Nick. How do you see now Derek, Nick, Olympia battle?
This last year that was
this one that just happened. Yeah, because Derek obviously beat him. You're in a better position. You had a guy beating the guy.
Right.
Losing the guy.
Well, obviously he already beat him. So he's already set precedents. But when I look at it objectively and I sit back and I look at the wow factor, you have to remember the wow factor comes in different ways in different packages. The wow factor for Nick Walker is the muscularity, his size, his conditioning. That's the wow factor. But if you look at his shape compared to Derek, and let's say I'm going to be a judge for a minute, I look at Nick Walker has a longer torso. He has shorter legs. But he makes up a lot of things in the conditioning department, in the muscularity, but structurally, the wow factor for Derek when he comes out and people are wowed by his front relaxed and the audience is gasping because of that extreme V and that extreme X shape is what that wow factor is for him. So these are all mutants. They're all X-Men to some degree, Avengers, however you want to call it, because to me, it's like growing up with action figures. These guys are all amazing. But when you really want to sit down and look at them and make that comparison, that's where his strength is. That's the
Superman beats Hulk. Again, V-taper beats mass.
But I do want to clarify too, though.
Speaking the same language, so I like, that. But Derek wouldn't beat him if Derek didn't have the conditioning. So if he wasn't properly conditioned to that degree, then he wouldn't beat him. Just because he's got good shape, I don't, could it carry him to a certain degree? I think that's what happens, is that you start to drop if it doesn't carry a certain amount of conditioning versus muscularity. All of these things are up for debate, but I think that you have to have a certain percentage of each to be able to move up to that first place spot.
Yeah, but I tell you this, already 2021, 21, when Derek won 212, and we talked after.
Yeah,
and I think I mentioned to you, like, initially when he stepped on the stage, he didn't impress me condition-wise. I thought he was off until he turned to the side, and then especially turned to the back.
Right.
And I said, it's that weird thing that from the back is completely different story. Yeah. That's the first time that you mentioned it. He still doesn't have that maturity density already at 2021.
Right.
So now he said 2022, he had a whole year to, put that new muscle. He did incredibly, right? But that maturity still didn't come yet.
Correct.
Okay.
It's all brand new muscle.
Yeah. For me, speaking of that now, because you're touching the subject, and he was sitting right next to Samson at the banquet. And I told him my opinion on that one, right? Size is already quite there, right? So if you do want to chisel it, and make that density, my suggestion, I don't know how you see on that one, that, extended peak contraction, complete stretching, complete shortening, and not just complete shortening, like maximal shortening, so there are different levels of contraction. A lot of people use certain level, but they don't do maximum level. So I see just the way, it's not like I'm scientist or anything, right? This is all for us, bro science. You've seen in the gym, but I've seen guys that they switch from, and I know that Derek already has a meticulous form and everything, but as Joe Weider principle was, what did he call it? Hypertension principle. That you pose your rep, like at the end of the rep, like you hit the pose and hold the pose.
Yep,
this kind of thing. Is he? Because he needs to bring this right and this.
Yep, shoulders
and chest. For me, that's what I've seen going into the Olympia. There was like a one-time picture in a blue tank top. And I've seen the fibers that I've never seen it before. Like, oh, okay, this is happening. But then still at Olympia, he still needs much more, especially when you stand next to somebody like Hadi Rambod. There's Rambod.
Hadi Rambod. I was in the first call out in the middle.
Yeah, I wanted to say your last name in my way, Rainbow.
No, I think that you're right. I think that all happens. But so if you want to talk a little bit about the technicalities of why that happens, we can discuss it. Yeah. So it's the same reasoning why people look so good when they're taking their off-season pictures, or even their gym pictures in the magic light. What happens is when you have hyperhydration, you have the ability for your body to look completely different than when you go into a dehydrated state. So as I've done seminars on this before, it really has to be a combination of fullness and dryness, and you're never going to peak to certain body parts optimal levels. So you have to gauge how you want the glutes, the back, the chest to look without giving up your legs, or without giving up your lats. So you could pull as much as you want, whether it's diet or whether it's water. But if you end up trying to peak somebody with just looking at just their shoulders or just their chest, but then their glutes aren't in, you're going to be 10th place. But if you're going to turn around and be able to create that optimal look with all of the body parts that are present and accounted for at that point in time, at that hour that you have to judge, and then you widen the hours because you know that they might not be on time at the Olympia, then you have to take all of those in consideration. That's why I have my certain soup foods backstage versus the types of foods that I have my athletes eat in the room. And I don't judge what they look like in the room in that lighting. I judge them in different kinds of light that I create because I know that's what it's going to emulate what they're going to look on stage. So all of these things are the ways that I dial in my athletes. So when you look at those things, I may think that that guy looks really good at 4 weeks out with 2 gallons of water, 300, 400 grams of carbs, a cheat meal the night before. But that photo, I know in my mind, what you saw, I know exactly what they did. And I'm not going to do that for that stage look because I know that the rest of the body isn't right. So what I do is I try to take all of the different factors and be able to blend them in to try to come up with an optimal look with anybody I train.
Yeah, but okay, I'm not gonna pretend here that I understand it because I don't, and I'm coach for a million years, right? You know, the technicalities that you're talking right now, that you have a certain kind of food back in hotel and certain backstage, right. It can pull from here or from there. This is Nobel Prize kind of discovery of how you can pull from chest to the glutes to the, you know. So I've seen the proteins we have our athletes eat are always, you know, pretty much the same. You combine whatever, chicken, turkey, fish, eggs, or whatever. Most of the people are going to go with more fish towards the end and stuff like that. Okay, carbs. Again, you know, athlete likes certain kind of carbs. If it's potatoes or oats or rice or whatever, right? Actually, I've seen your Chris Bumstead video that how he was combining like 3 carbs at the same meal.
Sometimes
I used
5,
to combine everything. Yeah, it's very, very interesting. But how can you tell to any physiologist or nutritionist that now this food that I'm eating, the rice or potato, whatever, I'm going to break it down into the glucose. It's going to go faster in the bloodstream, and this glucose is going to be distributed here or there. This is impossible to predict, right?
Right. No. I think you took it the wrong way. I'm not, as we're pulling, it's not the certain foods that are doing certain muscle groups. It's as you're drying someone out, when to know when to balance out fullness versus dryness in the particular body parts when you're looking at them. Not specific foods that fill up your chest versus your glutes, not that. And when I'm talking about the snacks on the foods is to make sure to keep their bodies leveled backstage when you have a wide array of timing that you might have to work with, i.e. the Olympia when it was 4-hour window, trying to work within that window so that they can possibly snack or be able to keep their bodies at their optimal level or within 5% of that. There's not going to be certain foods. You don't eat a banana and then your chest grows and none of that. What I was talking about was trying to balance out what the optimal look is. So for example, when you're working with Samson, you're going to have to decide, right? At what point you're trying to pull somebody, cut out their water, dry, cut it back and dry them out, fill them up. What is the optimal look? What is that optimal look? So you're chasing that optimal look. And I think that's what I meant by that. Not specific foods for certain body parts.
We cut out water way too soon. I didn't want to. All those things that
you didn't want to. Let's talk about that for a second. You didn't want to, but he did. Or?
Yeah, like on night before, right? Yeah. Because you see, that's the mentality always. I just want to be dry. I just want to be, conditioned, right? So thinking we needed to do this much sooner. So I didn't want to drink all the way to the Thursday night late, right? But I think he felt better by already reducing it on Thursday afternoon, right? And I've seen it. It's okay. Then I don't think it's a good idea. You should still drink, right? Because Friday, it's not the morning show. It's not the middle of a day show. It was 11 o'clock at night. So, when you cut the water and then try to reintroduce it, that's also a risk, But these kind of things, and I don't know, I'm sure that you have with each athlete. By the way, congratulations on three spectacular conditions. Chris and Hadi and Derek could not be peak better.
Thank you.
Even though what we were saying initially when Hadi came on, we were all judging him with the previous Hadi.
Yes.
But this Hadi would beat previous Hadi, as a whole idea. So I think it was in very good direction. So, I mean, you peaked them perfectly. And Chris Bamstead was very good in 2020. Yeah. But you even exceeded that. There was a more level of detail that I haven't seen, especially side, leg, hamstring, glutes, chest, tie-ins. Yeah, incredible, really. He is leaps and bounds above everybody, really. Head off to him. Hadi Chupan, for me, should be 3 times Mr. Olympia, so that tells enough about what I think of him. And Derek, going into the show, even when I discussed with manager Matt and Jay, they were kind of, putting him there like top 3. And I just didn't see it happen, right? I'm a shape guy. Yeah. So, of course, I love his shape. Just standing there, I thought this is going to be overwhelming. Well, let me tell you, I was front row, and I taped him. When he opened up in that front relaxed pose, is nothing I've ever seen in my life. That differential between waist and lats and shoulders, it's never before seen. I don't think so. I mean, that was phenomenal. So I kind of thought, it's not because 212. Right. I don't go with that idea. 212, so he can. I just thought that structurally, thickness-wise, he's not going to have enough. He had more than enough. Jesus Christ. The width was there incredibly. Thickness, I mean, I'm going to have to tell you, I still don't like his leg positioning. I said before, he looks like he's,
well, that's because his sponsor does that. It's riding a horse, you said? He's riding. Yeah.
It's not the rodeo, it's Olympia. Don't do that. Well, I don't, because when you look at him, he has this beautiful separation, deep, lateralis, medialis, everything all the way to the hip. Mm-hmm. I think it distracts, and Jay Cutler agrees with me. Back in the day, we had like pretty much feet together. Uh-huh. I think he will look even more aesthetic.
Yeah. So do you want me to tell you why I have him do that now?
Say it?
Do you want me to tell you why I have him do that?
Okay, tell me. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So
to create the illusion of more size?
Well, because he's so wide through the shoulders and he has bigger adductors. So the way that I have him pose that right now until he continues to keep growing, obviously that could change as his legs continue to grow because he was limited with how much muscle he could add. So if you go back and you look at his, when he was 212, when we won the 212 together, that was the first show we worked together. Mm. His legs almost looked a little bit soft because he didn't have the muscle built in. The conditioning.
Wait, which show was that?
That was 2021 to 212 in the 2 years ago. The first show that when he won the 212 2 years ago. That was 2021. Mm-hmm. And so when he did that show and we saw each other at the banquet afterwards, remember I came over and you were talking to him. So what was going on was the fact that his shoulders are so wide that when he stands too narrow, he looks like his legs look up and down. So as his legs are growing, because he's bending his knees and he has a little bit bigger adductors now, is that we've kept his knees slightly apart that way to show, because he's a better X frame because his shoulders are so wide. So that's why when you sit there and you're like, oh, why does he do that? Well, that's because it just shows a better X frame.
There's the only one reason why you do that, of course, when you think logically why, right? To create illusion. But I just, he's so aesthetic, beautiful shape. And, for me, this is kind of a blemish of that perfect, beautiful shape standing there. So if you hear even Steve Weinberger saying, oh, he still needs more legs. Yep. So I'm sure that when you hear a comment like this, then we have to create the illusion of the size. But it's always known that if you position yourself that way, you admitting that you have to create this illusion by doing it this way rather than having a confidence of standing this way. You know.
But were you blown away when he did his front lats? When he did his front?
Yeah, I mean, listen, by all means. That's the biggest X frame ever.
Right. And so that's the biggest X frame ever. But it would more look like a Y if you're standing straight up. But again, as your body changes and you put more size on, it's open for interpretation. It's just one of those things where what's that? I see that both ways, and probably if I coach him, maybe I would do the same. You know, if I'm analytical, you know, because sometimes I tell guys to do a pose that looks comfortable and looks shapely, but it doesn't look good. It creates weaknesses, and it clearly shows. Right, because bodybuilding is an illusion. So, you're going to be uncomfortable and look bigger. Yeah, that's right. Okay, that's it. So that's one of the things. And as that continues to he keeps continuing to grow his legs, and he keeps continuing to improve, then foot positions will change. Everything will start to change. But I think that with he's very wide. He's a very wide individual. I mean, Hadi is the same thing. Like with Hadi, that we talked a little bit before last week before we were going to do the podcast before the ice storm. Hadi, we gave up 10-15% conditioning compared to what he normally is for the extra 10 pounds of stage weight. And that was one of those things because I've always gotten feedback that he can be a little bit bigger. He can be a little bit bigger. He still was out conditioning everyone before, but now it's like, okay, if we give up 10 or 15% conditioning from behind, but we can put on those 8 to 10 pounds, how is that going to look? And it was a risk, but obviously it paid off because the density and that muscle maturity on Hadi was rewarded by saying, wow, we could really see him be dominant on that stage compared to before he was super ripped, but he just isn't big enough yet. He still looks a little undersized. Now that step up this year was a risk, but I think it paid off.
Oh, you know, you masterminded it perfectly. I mean, going into the Olympia, there were rumors about Ramy being bigger and better than ever, right?
Yes.
So I'm sure that you knew already you're not going to beat him exactly on the size, but there was arguments that he beat him already, you know, last year, right?
But he didn't. I agree with you. 2019, I think Hadi could have won. I think in 2021, Hadi could have won. He was third place in both shows. He wasn't even second place, but even if I would have loved to see him even in second place, but it was what it was. And as the feedback from Steve Weinberger and the rest of the judges was, he needs to be bigger. He needs to be a little bit bigger to be able to keep up with guys that are way bigger than he is. So that was something that we were going to go into with the game plan. And with him coming out a little bit earlier this year, that made a big difference as well for us to be able to really put on some extra size on him and then keep that size as he was dieting down for the show, the final days. But, you know, going back, let's go talk about the Arnold because I do not want to lose this. On the Arnold, what do you think the top 5? Give me your top 5 right now.
Samson winning.
Samson winning.
I said this, yes, I have to repeat it. I had Andrew Jack second.
Andrew Jack second.
And I had Big Ramy third over fourth Nick Walker and the fifth Sean Clarita. Okay. This is because I answered the way how I would want to how I would judge, not what I think the judge is going to judge.
Right.
I know that if you give me $1 million, you know, I can put only one guy. I would probably put on Nick Walker. That would be, you know, quite a secure bet because he had all the momentum going. He's going to show up in much better condition, I think, than at Olympia, you know, because he was good, not great there. He was very good there. I still don't think he was great. He can be even better conditioned. Mm-hmm. I see him in the gym and he has that kind of transparent onion, you know, cellophane skin.
Right.
I mean, it's like amazing. You just move it and you see every capillary going in here. I mean, really, really, really.
He's got very thin skin everywhere. Let me ask you this: with the things that you say, how does does he get mad because you guys see each other at the gym all the time, right? Aren't you at Flex's gym?
I mean, even that day, I saw him and he goes, "Oh, Milos, I know you talk shit." I said, I don't talk shit. I just say my opinion, right? And look, if he's here in a podcast, what am I supposed to tell him? Oh yeah, Nick, I think that you should win Arnold. You have a best physique. Is this what I'm supposed to say? Because now, if not, I'm a hater, right?
Right. Well, okay. I mean, it's your opinion.
Yeah, you're one of the favorites. You have your tools, okay? And, you should just pray that those tools are going to be judged favorably, But, that's why I'm saying, how you as a coach, how did you see Derek beat Nick? Because Nick is still Nick. Wow factor. Oh, my God, so much muscle there, Okay, so you have to be, the shape matters. What I say to people, and you can take pictures anywhere, cover the upper body, cover the lower body, cover from front and back, and then you see a lot. That's like instantly show you the balance. Okay, if you happen not to see it right in front of you, because I said like balance need to be preserved, and if balance is missing, it's so visible in so many poses. Okay, but they're going to that's why I said they're going to erase that. If you had that in a symmetry round and you established balance is not there, you're penalized. If not, if it's blended in, it can be just, pushed away. That's on that note. And now if you're going to freak me out in the second round. It's your round for that. Freak me out, no problem. And then there was the third round, which I thought would be a very good idea. Base your opinion on what you've seen so far, but give opportunity to the athletes to impress you to the point you can change the scores, and then if you can also give them prize money for a best posing award, they're going to put even more effort to entertain the
I think that's why they did that. They did that because they wanted people to the competitors to actually put more time and effort into the posing round. And for those like Melvin Anthony and those guys that used to really go out of their way to focus on that posing to make it really pop on stage and people make it memorable, they were giving out the posing awards. But I don't know if they're doing that anymore.
Well,
but Arnold Classic, let me not stray away from this. So I do have a very high hopes for my guy, Samson. You ask if I can provide you with some upgrade.
Yeah, that's what. Let's get into that. Do we have some?
There's some confidence here. So you got some confidence. Obviously, there must be something good in those check-ins.
Yeah, it is. It's very good. Right. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Samson's physique anyway, right? And then, of course, as his coach, I'm responsible. So you need to bring that beauty condition, slice and dice. But here it is, you as a coach, Hany, when you look and when you say certain things, you gain and then you lose a lot. So if I would gain a little bit of that, and lose like so much of that wow factor and completeness and roundness. This is where I was going. So I think that he has a best combination of everything: thickness, width, balance, shape, size. He was 290, 4.6. I mean, it's a crazy. So I do have a very high hopes. Is Nick gonna look more ripped than him? Probably. You already, can see this going in the stage. Nick has that ability to have a really super thin cellophane skin, see-through skin. Okay. Is going to happen exactly? Probably not exactly. But Samson's now separation on quads. It's deeper. Some striations are coming. Some striations are coming here. I just believe that he can overtake him. But Andrew Jack is that wow factor that we waited to be peaked properly. So far, I think 4 shows. Arnold, amateur, he wasn't. And then Texas was, pretty good. But it's still not 100%. Arnold Classic, UK, I think was not even as good as Texas. And Olympia was, good. Even just fair.
I think he was sick though too. Just to be fair, I heard that he was sick at the Olympia. I don't know exactly what was wrong with him, but I heard he was sick at the Olympia, so that's probably why. I saw him personally in Texas, and I talked about this in the podcast. I thought he looked really, really good, and you can see just that potential. But I think out of all the shows, from the ones I looked at their photos, and then I was in Texas here when he competed, I thought that Texas was the best look.
Yes.
But I do think that there was definitely a peaking issue, and then whether it was because he was sick or because just they were trying to do different things for the Olympia, it's going to be interesting to see him at the show, because if he peaks, then everyone's going to be like, wow, it could be that look. And then obviously you have Samson, but this is the thing that I'm interested in now, because you're such a fan of Samson's physique and just physiques that are pretty in general. What if Nick called you and said, hey, I want to work with you?
Of course I would. Listen, I have, I'm never going to show, because Nick didn't show the video, so I wasn't going to show. Before the Olympia, I went into the posing room and we posed, and I gave him some pointers. And if you would listen, all my pointers were...
If you would have listened, he would have won the Olympia?
Right? No. My point, no, of course he would. It's not like I would give them... There was just posing pointers.
Right.
To try to create the illusion of more aesthetics. You know, this is the only thing. And you can do this in every pose if you master it. And look, he's posing, I think, very, very good. You know, so what do you try to accomplish from the front? What's from the side? What, you know?
Did he listen to you?
I think that few things like side chest pose, he turns a little bit more around. You know, like that thing. You see me this big, or you see me this big, right? So kind of does.
Maybe that's why he beat Samson, is because you gave him those tips. Now,
you know what?
If I was Samson right now, I'd be like, you're supposed to be my coach. What's going on here?
If you remember that back in the day, Max Charles got pissed off at me, you know, because I told he heard me in a muscle development interview that after the prejudging, I was seeing Jan Valier, and I told him, hey, Jan Valier, you're not squeezing your legs. In the front poses, he would squeeze the legs, but by the time he would hit the frontal biceps, he would lose them. You know, same thing for that. And if I'm a judge and I'm judging, whoa, now you can lose. So my duty as a true fan, and I try to help everybody. And this was, I want to tell him that, but Max would figure, I basically help him with the info. I say, Max, I was backstage in New York, and I went to Akeem Williams in front of his coach, and I told him, listen, abs, you have to control them, glue it to the spine, breathe from the back, keep that separation going, right? Because that's just natural. I cannot help myself and not say that, right? So, of course, I want everybody at their best. I mean, I was giving little advices to Derek, after the Olympia also. I think that Derek needs to improve the abs. That still the way he hits ab shot is not glued in. That's the muscle you don't squeeze out; you squeeze it in. But you can squeeze it and crunch it and lose the separation, or you can make that separation more. So he needs to create that depth. Just the way he posed, I don't think he did it correctly. This is just my.
But just remember, I'm gonna counter that real quick. So I know exactly what you're talking about. So as you pull your abs in, and this is for all the listeners out there who are watching this on YouTube, when you pull your abs in, depending on how your body and your makeup of your abdominal girdle is, what happens is you can actually look a little more boxy. If you suck your abs in and you try to make your abs prominent, you can actually look a little bit wider through the waist, but you'll have more separation. Or you can suck them in, crunch down, and your waist will look smaller, which is what Derek does. So so that's why I'm saying, like, there's a lot of yin and yangs. There's a lot of different ways of being able to present your physique. So if you want more separation,
super small waist.
Yeah, he does.
So he has a super small waist,
right?
And for him, that would be even worth the risk. But there is two things. First, you and Chris Cormier was master of that also. First, you bring the waist in, and then you crunch it. So waist in, small waist, and then hit it. You just.
What you do is you end up. But if you look at it, like look at Chris Bumstead, what he'll do is he'll crunch and then he'll do a vacuum. So it's doing several different poses. Sometimes is also a really good technique for someone to do several different versions of an ab pose, or same thing would go with side tricep. A lot of my athletes would do a side tricep and then they would blow out and then flex downwards, because I was very, very big on that. So I would focus on that with my athletes a lot when they would twist, do a 3/4 twist and then lock out to try to show the definition in their intercostals, and then try to bring in that waist taper, but also show definition through the chest as well as the shoulders, as well as the tricep, and trying to create depth. So it's just
Hadi Chupin,
Phil Heath.
Of course,
yeah.
It's mandatory, and they all look phenomenal. Okay, so it's not classic side tricep pose, but after the classic, you hit this because you're showing too much muscle, too much definition upstairs,
right?
Chest, shoulders, arms, abs. It looks phenomenal. For the ab shot, if I'm telling you what I think, analyze the way he hit it. It's just not that perfect blowout, contraction and separation there. There are moments, and this is how there are moments that you see it and then he loses.
Right.
So if it's one moment that you can have it, then you can have every moment. You just have to freeze the moment, know how you do it, and that's the virtue of good posing. But anyway, so we were talking about Nick.
So we're gonna get you. I'm gonna get you to commit right now. We're gonna get those. We're gonna get those updated pictures or videos. We're gonna go ahead. I'm gonna have.
Maybe I should ask him permission from Samson. Say, Samson, this is cool. I think he'll be cool.
Okay, see if you can get the okay. We want a little exclusive action so that we can go ahead and highlight Samson, because again, this is going to be a great Arnold Classic, guys. So if you are not going, or if you plan on going, obviously we're going to be there. I'm going to have a booth there. Milos is going to be there. He's going to be running around. Are you guys having a booth too, or is Jim having a booth?
No.
Okay,
No. Yeah, we didn't talk about it yet. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So we have a booth there. It's going to be a great show. We're going to be able to watch the show. And we're also, for those that are not going to be there, definitely want to watch the pay-per-view, because it also helps just being able to, if you're a fan, support the shows. It makes a big difference. It really helps the total environment of bodybuilding. So, if you want to stop by, we're going to be at the booth. We're going to be announcing the booth. And one thing also too, Milos, before I forget, you've been doing some clinics too. I want you to make sure to talk about that. Didn't you have a clinic like last week when I talked to you 1 or 2 weeks ago?
I do a lot of training camps. I have my maximal hypertrophy training camps. And maybe if you have a time to touch the subject, because you do a lot of same concept, hyperemia, increased blood flow to the muscle. You can deliver it and then store it right there. So that was the principle I used for 30 years or something. And then before, I would have specific supplements give to the guys, before training, and then intra. And say, why don't you just make one? So I made it back in 2006, my first pre-intra post-workout, based on hyperemia advantage theory. Yeah, because 60-70% of blood that you have, there's now maybe 10% in your muscle would go to the muscle, so you can deliver it. Don't send empty blood. That was my whole idea. And then every muscle contraction opens up. It's ready for uptake if you have it available. Right. On that note, you mentioned that you wanted to maybe touch this subject of my protocols. The protocols. So naturally, I would cause insulin release intra-workout, because if I have high glycemia, high aminoacidemia, right, and high insulinemia, the insulin is released, glucose, amino acids, everything is there. Insulin pushes everything out of the blood into first available cells and tissues. Okay, so even if anybody wants to argue the point, if this is the blood and whatever is in the blood, and right now insulin is there, it's going to take out of the blood, right, into the first available cells and tissues. When I train, what is the only available tissue? Muscle tissue. So is this beneficial or it's not? And I know that a lot of people would say, no, you don't need it. Yeah, I just give you branch chain aminos, or some people give essential aminos and maybe add, some nitric oxide boosters and beta-alanine and citrulline, stuff like that. But I would ensure that you have enough glucose, so it's going to boost your endogenous insulin release, and then it's going to store everything. On that note, as you know, I'm guilty of exogenous also.
Yes.
Because I use that. For me, it was no-brainer. Supraphysiological amount of a storage hormone, insulin, is anabolic hormone. Is this plus or minus in the bodybuilding's arsenal? It is plus. And this is why I used it. But when I was with Jay Cutler on the podcast, which I wanted to mention, he did say that you never wanted to use it, that he used it before, and then with you, he never used it. So I understand that probably none of your athletes use it, and you're going to touch the subject. So I'm ready for discussion if you are.
Well, I know that you're. Wow, you can do a whole different show.
I'm going to say, because
this is going to be.
I could see that this could be a whole entire topic.
Yes,
because anybody who knows me knows it's hard to shut me up, and I have officially just turned into a listener of the podcast for this entire thing, because I'm just taking all this in. Because I would be very curious to hear a lot more of that.
Again,
okay. So you want to do this separate for that one?
Yeah, let's talk about that. Let's do a part 2 on this. Let's do a part 2 on this, and we'll talk about the different methodologies. And And let's make sure that the listeners, there's 2 things though. The listeners who are listening to this or watching it, if you're listening to it, go to the YouTube, go ahead and let us know what you want us to talk about, and let us know if there's any specific questions that you have, because we'll do a follow-up on this and get a little bit more technical, whether it's training, supplements, any of those things.
Because I want to follow up to one of these ones personally.
Okay,
I do.
Sorry,
for you,
he didn't let you speak.
Yeah. I just want to, next time I'm bringing a notebook. That's what I want to do. I'm going to be sitting here writing everything down. That's what I want. So yeah.
And the cool thing about it is that I think obviously I don't talk a lot about protocols, because I feel that my athletes, it's up to them to discuss it. But with Jay, I've been getting a lot of questions about it, because Jay had talked about it in several different podcasts about the lack of insulin use in my protocol, and other things that have been discussed outwardly with clients that I've had in the past or present. And so I am okay with it. Actually, it was funny because we were talking about it yesterday, because I am doing that seminar with Chris Bumstead on February 25th here in Irving. And one of the things that that I'm going to be talking about for one of the first times is going to be talking about a lot of the different protocols and what I believe in, what I don't believe in. And I feel that whether it's diet, training, nutrition, my philosophies. So February 25th, if you guys are interested, I'll put a link down below, because I am doing my first seminar with him. We're doing a tour, and we haven't put out the other tour dates yet, but the February 25th in Irving, Texas is been locked in. I'll put the link down below. So we're going to talk about nutrition, training, and as well as just being able to be the best version of yourself, both on and off the stage. But I know that Milos, you probably want to talk about
I'm dying but listen, because you're so knowledgeable, and I would need to pretty much convince you, as you're a coach that doesn't use it. Yeah. So you would have all the reasons why you don't want to use it, and I would try to convince you. But okay, we can leave this for a separate show. I feel guilty not mentioning Big Ramy. And
I was going to say, we left out the guy that just won the Olympia 2 times.
Yeah. So because the way we were discussing, and then, oh my God, I still think that Big Ramy's decision to do it is great, because he can rebound very quickly. It's not like he lost his body, and the peaking was not exactly perfect. Those injuries that he had would have affected him. Is going to still affect him in this certain poses,
right?
But can he have that overall wow effect like he used to? Like when it's Big Ramy as Big Ramy and Big Fool in a good condition. I think that he's still top runner. He still beat Samson. I mean, even going into the show, the only guy he lost, to was Nick Walker.
That's right.
And Big Ramy, not perfectly conditioned, losing to conditioned Nick. It doesn't mean that he's going to do it again, right? So Big Ramy is a big enigma. Dennis James said that, the way he looked going into the show, he really didn't think anybody can touch him.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen that nerve damage, right? The lower lats insertions are not there. They're not going to be there in that back double biceps pose. Lat spread pose, he can get away with it, without being seen. And he's still so wide and glutes are there, crazy legs, width, everything is there. Ramy from the front relax. Yeah, I would just suggest do not make his waist big, like you just talk about if you do it wrongly. And that's a perfect example now that you mentioned.
Yeah.
I said, I don't like big Ramy's frontal biceps when he goes down with the abs.
Mm-hmm.
I could get away with it, and I did it. And all the guys that don't lose the width and they don't thicken the waist and show the abs, beautiful.
Right.
But for him, not just that he thickens the waistline, he internally rotated the arm, and now the biceps, the arm was much smaller.
Right.
Again, so right there was a big mistake. And that's the first pose.
Yeah.
And then from that, you're going into the large spread pose, the second pose. And he did the same thing, open and then go down. And again, the same thing happened. For me, that's a huge mistake. So first two poses, going against somebody like maybe Nick, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, he's going to exploit you there. And then you're going to go to the side. Side chest, side triceps. Ramy is good, great. So he's going to hold his own or beat, those guys. He's going to be very competitive. Back double, he's going to lose. If you're even a coach, okay, let him lose that pose, no problem.
Right.
And then lat spread, he's going to gain momentum back in. And most muscular, so big Ramy, what do you think they're going to bring? They're talking about flat look, so they're going to probably have to go for a fuller look.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm hearing in between lines, right? Nobody says anything other than, the flatness made him softer.
Well,
so you would assume.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's always a combination of fullness and dryness. So if he was flat, and when you get watery, because if you get so flat, you become watery because you're just, the tension is not held. The carbohydrates are not really loaded the muscle properly. So you don't get the separation and you don't get the definition. So if that's the case, yes, it's going to be that, but there's a lot of other different types of variables too, that at the end of the day, I'm excited to see it because I'm just like, okay, can he come back? Absolutely. It's just a matter of how much is it going to make a difference in 7 weeks, 8 weeks.
Yeah, but he's a second highest placing. He only lost to Nick, right? So in theory, if he just repeats his condition, right, he would still be
because you can't think that way, because you got to say Samson
theoretically
better,
speaking,
right? Because that means that everybody else has to be stagnant. So you have to say, how much better is Andrew going to be? How much better is Samson going to be? How much better is William Bonac? Don't count him out, And I think that those have to be addressed as well. And then the X factor is Sean Clarita, because we all know what Sean's going to look like. But again, he gives up a lot of weight. But how is that going to look next to somebody like that? Because he's only going to be 175 pounds. But if he looks so complete, that is a compelling argument, but you won't know until you stand next to him. So when he qualified for the Olympia Open last year, he came in beating Regan and he came in beating Sergio, but he didn't have any of these top guys. Now, let's see how he looks like. That's exciting too, to see what he's going to look like next to some of these top guys.
But how do you see that? I mean, because we talk about classic.
I think it's so this is what I think. I think that when you don't peak, you open up that window for people who peak even at a smaller, lighter body weight to beat you. And I think that's where Sean's going to make up ground. So if he catches these guys slipping, he will beat them because if they don't peak properly.
Yeah, and that he peaked every single time in the last so many years. I mean, he's dynamite. It's just after
he's very dangerous.
Very super dangerous. I mean, there was that X factor that he can possibly win the show. Would you bet that he's not going to win? I mean, there's so much compact muscle and the conditioning and nothing missing. Narrow, that's his downfall.
He's narrow, and some people will say, oh, he's not big enough because of this, that. But it's a comparison. So it's all about comparisons at that point. So whoever has the most complete look is who should win.
Yeah.
So so we'll go ahead. Well, thank you for your time, Milos. It's always good talking to you. Great to have you on the podcast, and we definitely have to do a part 2. And I think that we'll listen to the fans, and we're still waiting for the 500 likes so we can get him to take his hat off, because he's never. I think he showers and he sleeps with his hat.
I think we're breaking a record right now. I think we're only a few comments away from me having to take my hat off on the next podcast, so we'll make that happen.
Yeah. All right, but Austin, I apologize. You didn't talk much.
Hey, no,
I just got too excited. I mean, I could question Hany all day long, right now, because you have like so many, things that I want to find out. So let's do the technical part, next time.
Yeah, let's talk about the philosophies.
About Olympia.
I think we can talk more about training. We can talk about more nutrition, and then we can turn around and you can expand on talking about insulin.
I'll get those 6 kilos on by next time.
Okay.
Yeah. What do you mean? 6 kilos in 6 days.
Yeah.
No, you said you wanted 50 pounds, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Something like that. It's an easy 50 pounds.
Yeah. Hany,
yes.
What is the biggest gain you would have from contest to contest, like stage weight on anyone? Do you know?
Derek?
No, this year?
Yes.
How heavy was he?
Oof, around 230. So he went from 211 3/4 to about almost around 230. Give or take. I got to go look and see the notes from before and after prejudging, and see how much, because most of the guys will lose a little bit of more weight from Friday to Saturday, but I'd have to go look right around that 230 mark. But that's the biggest 1 year jump.
And for me, because maybe you said it publicly, but I didn't hear you. So when was the decision made to go to open rather than 212? After Pittsburgh?
For sure after Pittsburgh, because he was still dieting to try to keep his weight down. So I don't know if you heard the story, but he was supposed to be closer to 230 in the off season so that we can be more seasoned at 212, because we were going to do one more year of 212. And then after that, we were going to decide if we were going to go open, but he was going to do it for one more year. He was only on 100 to 150 grams of carb. Excuse me. So that's why when he was doing the cardio and the dieting, it's so far out in April, May, it was so that he would stay leaner and keep his weight down, because he has a natural tendency to try to blow up because he can eat like a machine, right? There's no person on this planet that I have met that can eat like Derek. When he's got one of those appetites, and it's very, very important, because I talk about it a lot, is how well you end up maximizing your digestion has a lot to do with how you grow. And he can eat. And so I had to keep his carbs really low all through the off season, because
he said 230, but what was he on the stage in Pittsburgh?
250. I don't know. He lies.
I think he said it was 257.
Yeah, he will 252 to 257 on at Pittsburgh. 250. Yeah, he lies, because he lied to me. He told me that it was like 249.
It was on the podcast when he shared that one.
Yeah,
and then because he just started scratching his head and he was like.
He tells partial truths. I'm not going to call it a lie. He because he was telling me 250. I'm like, what are you weighing?
250s?
Yeah, and
250s.
And it was like
rough range.
And then next thing you know, 250, and then 6. And then it was like,
would they say that low 50s, high 40?
It's just 275. It's all a rounding error, But yeah, so he was right around that 250 mark, or 56 maybe, after he ate for the day, versus being fasted in the morning weight, versus after about 5-6 pounds heavier at night.
Legs in that guest posing. I mean, that picture of a frontal biceps, the legs look humongous. I mean, seriously. So I don't know. I wasn't there. Chris Cormier was there. I think Daniel James was there. It's like, he was the by far most impressive guy on the stage and looked like the biggest one. And you had a major lineup. So that put things in perspective. So I'm looking forward to see what he brings. So if he was 230, what do you expect? I know it's a stupid question. I hate when people ask me how much you think he's going to weigh. But then again,
this is the Milos fan part.
Yeah,
he's like this is a stupid question.
Out.
This fan's coming out. What's up, Milos? Ask the question, brother.
Yeah, because you put the 10 pounds on Hadi, right? You're going to put the 10 pounds on Derek?
It doesn't. I don't choose that.
You have no idea. Okay, yeah, that's a stupid question. I apologize.
Yeah. It's
a question that still needs to be asked, though.
It's all about quality, and at that point, it's about the look. It's like what I was talking about when you start carving somebody up, drying them out, and trying to peak them for a show. It's all about the maximizing the fullness and the dryness and being able to really gauge what's going to be the best look on that stage. So the same thing happens right now. If he gains 3 or 4 pounds, great. If he ends up gaining more than that, great. As long as the look is more impressive than the prior year.
Can I already see the headlines? Hany says Derek is going to be 250. That's the headlines of all the YouTube videos.
No, but probably you don't even ask him for the weight. I'll tell you, honest to God truth. Mm-hmm. When I start pushing Samson, okay, we had that first off season that we really have, and push it. So he was, 300, 310, 320. So I can't even breathe. I said, you're still getting leaner. I mean, you're not getting fat. Yeah, and then we pushed to 330, 150 kilos. Okay,
right. So
we were maintaining this weight for a while, and then as soon as he started dieting, right, that initial drop.
Yes.
So he lost like 7 kilos right away.
Yeah, 10, 15
and I could see that was affecting him. And I told him, do me a favor, don't even step on the scale. And 16-week diet, I never ask for the weight. I promise you this. People say, Milos, you're so full of shit. Ask him. Never. He didn't volunteer to tell me. I'm just watching the videos, okay? Until Monday before Olympia, they flew in. I trained legs with him, right? And that's his wife came to me. I said, Milos, what do you think he weighs? I said, I just see him in the posing room, and I mean, that was impressive. He looked way better in person than when you see the video. It's not the same. He had to be over 290. Shit, he was 294.6.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so but I could care less.
Right.
So when they step on that scale, it means nothing.
Right. So to me, it does. So just to give you, we can talk about this in the next episode.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Okay.
I have my athletes check their weight sometimes 3 times a day because the formulas that I use to be able to gauge kind of what I'm trying to do has a lot to do with that. So
yeah, high tech.
I don't know if you call it high tech. It's just my method. I don't know if it's high tech, but
listen. I don't use it. It's very good. I like to learn more about it. So if you volunteer,
I would drive Jay nuts. I would have Jay send me pictures in the morning and then at night, and it would drive him crazy. And I loved it kind of because it tortured him. So because he wasn't used to that. Because I think with Chris Aceto, he didn't have that structure that I had. And it reminded me, working with Chris Bumstead this year, reminded me a little bit with the first year I worked with Jay and in 2009. And it was one of those things where it's just, they're not used to that because Ian isn't probably like I am either. So I am so meticulous with the information that I need and when I need it. It's just like, wow, this is a lot of work.
That's what Jay said, because I asked him, Jay, you work with all these coaches, and tell me. And he points you out, and then he says that you are such a fucking pain in the ass, but it had to be that way. And he appreciates it, like, wow. And that, you see, maybe I'm going too easy on my guys. So what do you say? You're asking three times update pictures a day?
No, sometimes it would be 3 times. It would be in the morning sometimes it would be after training and then at night. But at least twice a day at given times, and then the weight twice a day, because I have a formula of wanting to know where I extrapolate weight versus conditioning at certain times of the prep, where I end up actually creating an idea of where I want that person at 4 weeks, at 3 weeks, and what the delta is from the morning weight to the nighttime weight. And then that is processed within my formula of how I want that person to look.
Yeah. Damn, like, wow, shit.
You got some stuff to cover in episode 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, god damn. That goes, there goes the bro science, and it comes to bro science.
Yeah. So you wanted to ask me a question. I told you I'd answer it.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to find out more details. Listen, everybody can learn from that. I mean, Jesus Christ, honey, that's like something special. I don't want to
It's an unhealthy obsession, Milos.
Now, but that's going to put me into the thinking mode. Exactly. What can you possibly do? So I didn't do it that way. All the respect.
Yeah, no, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. We'll talk more about it. I think this is going to be really good food for thought for 100%. Those listeners. We want to make it really, really special for them. So again, thank you again for your time, because I want to be able to continue this conversation.
Anytime.
Thank you so much. Hany Rambod, Milos Sarcev, and we have the wonderful Austin, and that's the truth.